Welcome to Seaview Circle. This is our recap podcast where we review our favorite TV shows and movies of the past, present, and possibly the future.
And we do this all in service to our end goal of determining whether our viewing taste is highbrow or lowbrow.
Now, along the way, we also muse on vintage styles and fashions, possibly some filming locations that may be lost to the decades. Now, Douglas, what exactly are we going to be covering today?
Well, today's discussion is Yellowjackets Season 3, Episode 10, entitled Full Circle. The director is Bart Nickerson, and the writer is Ameni Rosa. The synopsis is as follows. Things turn frigid as bloody new alliances get built and spilled. It's our time right now down here in the new Queen's Court. Eat up, drink deep, and descend. So how you feeling?
And those things did happen, right?
They sure did.
They ate. There's drinking. There's descending.
There is descending. I guess there is.
Wow. Okay, so we will get into all that in just a moment. But first, we wanted to thank all of you who joined us over at Sci-Fi Vision last Sunday night for the live chat recap. Did you have fun with that?
I had a blast. It was really fun having a real loose conversation about, all the possible theories and seeing chat from people.
We apologize that we were not actually technically in the chat because we should have signed in beforehand. We failed to do that. We couldn't figure it out. But I do think we did see some of you in there, and we want to thank you for all your participation. Great questions. We had so much fun with Scarlett and Jamie. Hope to be back again at some point. I do think we just thrashed through so many thoughts.
Yeah,
it's like mind-boggling.
Yeah, we were kind of overexcited. So our portion was about 2 hours, and then I felt bad for them because I know that they had to do their recap.
They still did the breakdown.
Normally they do is it about 3 hours, and I think it ended up
it went into hour four for them.
So
we apologize if we kept John.
But we had fun doing that, and I hope you guys had fun.
Yes.
And we look forward to doing another one.
Now, we also are so excited because we just attended a special screening of this finale last night at Vidiots with a cool Q&A with a lot of the cast, and we had a great time. We're going to give you a little report about that towards the end of this particular episode, so stay tuned for that. So super excited to get to this jam-packed episode, but before we do that, we do have a postcard from the Edge. And I want to say again, wow, those YouTube conversations are fantastic. Thank you so much. There actually were some late-breaking comments that came in just right before episode 10 dropped that we couldn't even really get to or respond to. So eventually we'll get back to it. We apologize if we leave anybody hanging for a while. But the one that I actually wanted to bring up here was just a short message from TikTok. And this is from the user MadzyB. Okay, Madsy B left a comment in reference to our short that was pulled from last week's episode where we were questioning Hannah's motivation for knifing Kodiak. Okay, so Madsy B says, I think it's so the girls think she has something to hide too if they get home. So she won't spill what she saw everyone doing as an attempt to get them all out alive.
She's literally got enough. She's got the same skin in the game.
Has the same skin in the game as they do. She's trying to show them that she is,
she's a team player.
She's a team player, exactly. Now it's interesting because we failed to mention this part in the last episode, but they showed it in the intro of the finale, where Shauna asked Hannah, "Where did you get the knife?" And that is when Hannah says, I got it from Kodiak, which makes sense. So in that sense right there, she's sort of protecting Natalie, who gave her the knife and was going to make this attempt to get them all out. And at the same time, she also secured her spot, as we were just talking, as a team player.
Right. And you can see that immediately now we know that there's an alliance between Hannah and Nat.
There's an alliance between Hannah and Nat, but there's a sort of faux alliance maybe with Shauna.
Right.
Although when we get into the episode, which we will do in just a moment, you do see that she is very much still our little Patty Hearst.
Yep, she's Patty Hearst, all right. She'll do what she needs to do. Get that gun out, Tanya.
Yes. So anyway, thank you, Madsy B, for that lovely comment. And we appreciate if you want to comment on this particular episode at any time during this podcast. We would love that. It really helps our algorithm to have that engagement. Of course, you can also subscribe to our channel.
And did you like it yet?
Yeah. Did you do that little like?
Because it only takes 2 seconds.
Only
and
takes
it really
2 seconds.
helps
You
us.
can do that over on Spotify as well. You rate us a 5, right?
Yeah,
5, yes.
Just rate us.
And if there's a poll question, you could also answer that as well. That would be really fun. And then, of course, you can also message us via Gmail. That is cviewcircle@gmail.com. And you can also find us on Instagram, Blue Sky, and TikTok.
So let's go.
All right, so we're picking up right where we left off, really, with the Misty Natalie moment and the discovery of the flight recorder that Misty had been hiding from everybody. And so, again, Natalie is really pissed off.
She was super pissed. Didn't she punch?
She did.
Punched Misty, and I was like, okay.
And she was definitely channeling adult Natalie in this moment, Juliette Lewis, in the way she delivered her lines and also in her physicality, which I thought was great. But of course, Natalie says, if there is any way that this device can get us home, let's figure this out, right? Yeah. So then we head back to camp. I guess it's the same night.
I think it's the same night and probably a little later or something like that.
So you see Lottie kind of sleeping, and then there's like she sees like a cave and all this stuff, but then it swaps over to some of the tribe members passing by Lottie's fun hut. I don't know how much fun Lottie's having in her hut.
It looks very glamorous. All of it looks great.
Yeah, it's super glamping, super glamping. So what's happening here is they're doing nightly bed checks, I guess, because Natalie has proven herself to be, on the opposite side of things, right? She had put together this little scheme to get out of there. So I guess they're looking for weapons, right?
Yeah, and I think what you're getting in throughout the whole episode, as we'll see, is that Shauna is sensing more dissension in the ranks. Like, she's already seen it, but it's getting worse. So she's almost like Aunt Lydia in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yes, exactly. So then you have Natalie woken up, and you have Misty there as well. And there's this kind of back and forth, because they know about the transponder business. But Natalie immediately says to Misty, I don't want to speak to you, please. And then there's this moment, if you notice, that Van gives this little nod to Misty, like, go to bed.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I thought
at the time I just thought it was like pecking order.
Yeah, and I think by the end of the episode, okay, there's something up.
Yeah,
there's a plan.
Don't you think? Maybe more people are in on this than we know.
Yeah, well,
there's some more talking behind the scenes,
right? And we'll see that play out.
But I did love in this scene, though, the shot of what we call little Patty Hearst there, Tanya with the rifle or whatever. It's not she's right there with Shauna. She takes off the mask, and it was just exactly.
Did
the
you
same
know
pose.
she had the really dark eye makeup too? I was going like, oh, she had a little smoky eye.
Yeah, a little smoky eye.
Susie Sue.
Yeah, a little smoky eye. She watched Donna Mills' The Eyes Have It.
Yeah,
VHS.
she's been watching that tutorial. Her makeup. That's a tie into our Knots Landing.
Yes, exactly. Now, we do have a moment here where we can already cross off a theory. I'm so excited because we do see, as the camera pans over, we see Kodiak's head on a pike.
Yep.
And what's so funny is that there are arrows stuck in him as well. So that must have been from Melissa.
That was revenge.
Getting retribution.
Yeah. But it's just... Yeah, another one of those heads on a stick.
Now, do you think that they ate him already?
They must have eaten him. And I kept thinking, okay, certainly they can't be very hungry then.
Right. This is a big question, actually.
They've had a few good meals
back
in
to
a
back
row.
to back. And I actually want to really talk about that at some point. What's the timing of all this stuff? Because I'm a little confused. But we are going to now cross off on our theory list that at one point we considered, like everybody else, is Kodiak the Antler Queen? And at this point we can say,
no, he's not the Antler Queen.
He's dead. He's dead. Okay, moving on.
I think the thing too, we know now that they're going into winter as well. So maybe, having a little extra red meat is not bad.
Gotta bulk up.
Yeah, you got to bulk up like I did, unfortunately.
Swapping back over into Lottie's fun hut with that dream, she looks so angelic as she's sleeping. And what she is envisioning is this meeting with the Antler Queen. She has envisioned what the Antler Queen looks like at least a full day before the Antler Queen becomes the Antler Queen, or maybe several days. We don't really know the timing.
Or maybe somewhere else. I don't know, because she still didn't have those fingernails.
I know.
But, because we did talk about this imagery that we had seen in the promo. I think we talked about it in the last episode. So it's the Antler Queen.
And much more, we'll say, angelic or whatever you want to call it, spiritual moment, because there's all those the ray of light coming out behind her, and it is Lottie meeting her, I guess, and I called it the scream dream, right? Because she screams when she sees this, and you do hear a voiceover which I couldn't fully tell. I mean, I guess it was adult Lottie, but it didn't sound exactly like Simone Kessel, but it kind of did. It almost sounded like they were both talking at the same time. I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, it was very weird.
It said, "I am ready. My will is your will."
Yeah.
Right? Now, I felt
Did you also hear "It will be over in a second"?
Oh, okay. Maybe that goes into the next scene?
Yeah, I heard that too.
But what was so interesting in that moment is that there were flashes, right? There were flashes of that first time that you saw, and I'm not sure of the episode, but I'm assuming maybe it's episode 6 of season 1, Saints, maybe, where she poses in front of the antlers in the cabin. And so they flash to that, but then they also flash to the cabin burning.
Right.
And then the symbol.
Yeah.
So we always said, okay, it could be Coach Ben who burnt down the cabin. It could be Ty or Van, because we were talking about that whole thing in the last couple episodes. But what if it were Lottie burning down the cabin for the same reason she just said a couple episodes at the end when they were all doing the unmerge, that she didn't want to go home because she knew what would await her when she went home, and this is where she was safe. So maybe she burnt down the cabin.
Yeah, maybe.
Back then.
Yeah.
Because she knew then she could be close to that nature for as long as possible. So that's intriguing. That is something we could add maybe to the theory list, because it's not really proven.
Well, and I'm going to say we can talk about a little bit more when we get into the further scenes with adult Lottie.
Yeah. Well, let's do it, because what we have there is a shot of the morgue. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's really weird because you have young Lottie showing up, and I don't know if you caught this, but she is wearing the same outfit that she wears at the party before they leave.
Oh, right.
For nationals.
Yeah, I mean,
that
I felt
pink
like
sweater.
Yeah, I know I had seen it. I couldn't remember where I saw it, but I was like, that looks familiar to me.
Yeah. And so what happens is adult Lottie wakes up from the slab in the morgue, and she's like, oh. And I thought, oh my gosh, is she alive? I thought it was real for a second, right? And then what does she say? She says, did I miss it?
Yeah, it was really weird, that whole sequence.
So at that point, I thought, did she miss it? I thought she meant like her death, maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
It's like this is that passing moment again where we had before on the plane with Natalie, and we just had last episode with Van, and now here we have Lottie and Lottie. But what's interesting is that young Lottie says, no, you didn't miss it. Remember what we promised. It's time to meet her.
See, okay, so now this is where I'm going to get into it. I have kind of a theory on this. And I know in the episode, we're seeing something else play out, which I don't know if we want to talk about this now or not.
Let's just get to what we saw before the intro, or the theme intro, which is that we have this kind of back and forth of the the hotel tunnel under system with the, we see young Lottie and we see adult Lottie both moving through this passageway. I love it when adult Lottie gets off the table in the morgue, and then like the gown falls. Yeah. I thought that was really cool. So it's showing this back and forth, and I am really confused, to be honest. I'm confused still.
Yeah, I'm confused, but
I'm confused as to whether or not any of that ever happened. Did young Lottie ever do this? Did she envision this? Obviously, earlier just in this episode, she envisioned the Antler Queen before we've seen the Antler Queen officially. So there is some sort of vision. She has visions.
She's always been able to remember. She has visions of the future, or,
yes,
that kind of thing.
This is, whether you want to call it supernatural or just abilities of the mind.
Right.
She has this.
She has something. She has an ability.
Right. She has an ability.
She's a seer. She's what you would call almost like a remote viewer.
And that's, and we were talking about her going back and being medicated by her parents or by doctors, and then that shutting off those visions. Yeah. Right? The visions come back once she runs out of medication in the wilderness.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Anyway, what also happens is there's this baby crying. Okay.
Right.
So there's this baby crying, and you see adult Lottie trying to get closer to the sound of the crying baby, I assume. And then all of a sudden she like wakes up and she's just wearing like pajamas, and she's in the tunnel, whatever, the behind the scenes of the hotel, back of house. And it's like dark and dank and quiet. There's nobody there. And she's like, she woke up. It's like she sleepwalked or whatever down there, and there was nobody there. So I think that was really maybe the impetus for her to recreate the vision, right? Later.
Right.
Okay. Which we will, well, later in the past, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what
I mean, it's still all very confusing.
Yeah.
But I got to say, the thing with the baby crying, I just keep going back to this weird concept that I think.
I know.
My concept
I know.
possibly is that the baby that died is the Antler Queen. That's what I'm thinking. Is that this was that spirit that was of nature and ultimately.
Oh, we're getting heavy at only 10
I
minutes
know,
into
but
this episode.
I know that, like, okay, well, I don't want to do any spoilers for the end of the episode.
I feel that totally makes sense. Remember in season 2, Lottie was obsessed with this baby growing inside of Shauna. She basically took ownership of it for her against Shauna's will. I really think that the Shauna-Lottie relationship has really been blown wide open in this particular episode. But you can recall those scenes, especially in episode 6, Key. Remember when, the baby's dead, but we think it's alive, and Shauna can't feed it. And so Lottie steps in to feed it. She always wants to be the one that has the connection. But what happens, as we see later, is that it is Shauna that has this power. And as a result of being her child, so does Callie.
Yeah.
We'll get to it. But wow, that was quite an intro. She says, are you there? Right?
Yeah, she goes, are you there? And it was like, oh, this is getting real freaky in the hearse. I mean, and well, I guess we can talk about other theories as well as we get through this, but I'm going to mention it later in another portion of the recap. But it does tie into this scene or overall concept of what's going on, maybe.
Well, continuing along with this storyline in a way, right?
Yeah.
As it evolves. We have Misty meeting up with Callie at the high school under the bleachers. Is she smoking out again?
I think she was.
She probably
Who knows?
was. I mean, what else was she doing out of the bleachers?
She
right?
needs to do something to kind of get through this stuff, right?
So Callie is just so shocked to see Misty there, and then Misty immediately, I think, she says, "Oh, I know that you drugged me." Way back at the
she's like, you put something in my drink, and and so she's questioning all of her motives.
Right. And she says, I think you did it because you want to find out from Lottie what happened back out in the wilderness. And she's like, oh, you're ridiculous. Whatever. And then she says, I think you went to go speak to her on the day she died, and I think you killed her.
Yeah, it's matter of fact.
Your DNA matches your mother's. And one of the best lines, perhaps the best line of the entire episode is, I forgot that mothers and daughters share mitochondrial DNA and homicidal tendencies.
Yeah, that was cute.
So Callie admits right then and there that she did it.
Yeah, it was weird. She broke pretty quickly.
It was weird. It felt a little procedural here, this whole section.
I would say it was this section out of the whole episode, maybe slightly rushed for me.
Yes.
A little rushed, because it was like, the cleanup is so quick.
The cleanup was quick. Now, I will say that if you take into context what we were just kind of speaking about with season 2, and then also kind of what happens for the rest of the episode after this has already aired, it does feel like it has a bit more weight to it. But in that moment, I was like, whoa, we're going quick.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I was like,
what happens is that Callie tells Misty that she had the tape, but it went missing after Lottie had stayed at the Sadecki house. So she went to go to the Janeway to meet up with Callie, and it's weird because at the time when she's in the lobby, she just happens to be coming out of that door that leads down to the back of house. So anyway, they go back down there, and then all of a sudden Callie's like, what is going on here? Because she's already lit the candles, and she is wearing that gorgeous satin robe or whatever that she ends up being found dead in.
And then this was when it just starts getting real weird again too, because Lottie is in full
yes, she is.
She's oh, it's, you know.
She says to Callie, you didn't come here for the tape, but, you know, here it is, right?
Yeah.
She gives her back the tape. And then she says, you came here because you wanted to learn about your mother. You wanted to understand your mother. And so then I will say, again, there's this big kind of thing that I feel like I want to add here, and I don't know how much you want to get into it, but we talk about, again, this wilderness baby. We talked about it at Sci-Fi Vision. Did Lottie have a baby of her own? Is Callie Lottie's child? Like, these are all these questions that we had, right?
Yeah, and I was a little perplexed because I know that, like, okay, even if we go on timelines of the way that the show
25
would be,
years.
25 years.
Could Callie be 25 years old?
I don't think so.
Could she be 24 years old? I don't know.
No.
So it doesn't seem like that is really valid, but it is weird because there is that sense to Callie from Lottie. You wanted to know more about your mother, and you could almost think, oh, I'm your mother. Or maybe she wants to be. You know, she wants to be Callie's mother because she's so powerful.
Right. And she had that, you know, the motherly tendencies before to Shauna's baby. Right. And I guess here it is again.
And that one was lost, right? So she said,
lost.
You are the child of that place. It took our baby, it meaning the wilderness, and it gave us you.
Yeah.
And she says, you are just like her, your mother, but more. Right. Because I think the thing is, what Callie is saying is, yeah, you know, when I see my mom, she tries to pretend that she cares about me and does nice things for me, but when I look at her, there's this coldness. There's like it's like I'm looking at dirt or something, or earth.
Yeah, there was
and that's when Lottie says, "Oh, well, you know what that is? It's it." It's that power. It's that.
She said, "You feel it."
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a weird scene. I was still trying to make sense of it this morning when I was rereading.
Well, I mean, whatever it is, whatever Lottie's trip is, because obviously we know she is. She's out to lunch and dinner and breakfast. she, especially in this episode, you can see how excited she is as a teen to do all these terrible things. She's really into it.
Now, as we've watched, this is the third season of Lottie. I definitely think she is way crazier than I ever imagined.
Agreed.
Like at the beginning.
Agreed.
And I still, believe in some small supernatural stuff going on with her. Like we said, the visions.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I do think she's cuckoo.
Yeah, and she's definitely like grasping on and holding on to whatever she can to kind of continue this or replicate that time in the wilderness, which is interesting because that's exactly what, well, I don't want to spoil it, but Shauna kind of comes to that conclusion at the end of the episode. At this time, though, in that stairwell, Callie is freaked out.
Yes.
And she pushes her.
Yeah, she pushes her. And then conveniently, Lottie has the tape on her.
Yeah.
And she just takes the tape.
Right.
And that's how she gets the tape. So that was a big reveal.
Yeah.
Because I kept thinking before all this happens, like, why did she hold back on the tape so long?
She didn't have it for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good explanation. She didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And then later on,
oh gosh, we will talk about it.
We will talk about
the
note.
Yeah. So this is great. So now we can actually cross off on our list that other Ty, Walter, Mr. Matthews, nor his nurse killed Lottie. And we can also mark as true that Callie was present at the time of Lottie's death, potentially doing a ritual. Okay, so then we have, I guess it's the next day or whatever, and we have a scene at the Sadecki household, and it is basically Callie revealing to Jeff that, yes, she killed Lottie.
And that it was an accident.
Jeff said it was an accident. But was it an accident?
Well, no, she said it was an accident even when she told Misty.
But it wasn't really an accident.
Well, it wasn't really. She did push her.
Yeah.
But did she push her meaning to kill her?
Did she push her meaning to kill her? No. But she pushed her forcibly downstairs.
Well, and maybe that's just because it's in her.
Yes.
She just gotta, you know.
So, yeah, I think Jeff does say you were scared and you were just doing it to save yourself, really,
and he
from
was
that
saying
moment.
You're not like your mother as well, which was he reiterated that to her.
Right.
Because I think that's the whole thing with Callie is grappling with the fact that she's got this darkness in her the same way that her mother is. I would say she's not as crazy as her mom.
No, absolutely not. She doesn't have the same backdrop of experiences as Shauna does, right? I
Yeah.
mean, she might have the genes, but she doesn't have all of that craziness from the wilderness.
I haven't seen her playing around with too many knives and
Yeah,
skinning
exactly.
too many rabbits.
Right, not yet.
Yeah.
Jeff in that conversation says, "I'm sorry, I didn't protect you from her."
I was really sad when I heard all that, and I felt bad for the Jeff character.
Yeah.
I felt bad for Callie.
Right.
I'm like, he said something about, it took your mom 25 years to tell me what happened.
Even 10% of what happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was like, boy. This is
that's when they decide to take a hike.
Because we'll see in later scenes
Yeah.
that Shauna is arriving home.
She comes home and she calls out to them, and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And she goes and she sees the bed in her bedroom is perfectly made. She looks in the closet. None of Jeff's things are there. She goes to Callie's room. None of her things are there.
And then she calls on the phone, and it's like a discontinued number or whatever. I felt so bad for Shauna. I was like, oh, my God. This is really brutal. What a brutal kind of...
It's a bad day. It's a bad day for
That's
Shauna.
a bad day. Probably
It's going to get worse.
I wonder if it was a Monday. You know, I hate working on Mondays. I don't do Mondays if I don't have to. We try not to here at Seaview Circle, right? So in a panic, Shauna heads over to Misty's house, where Misty is cleaning Caligula's cage.
I love this because immediately Misty's taken back, like, oh, this crazy. She says, I want you to know that every corner of this house is being recorded.
Video recorded and saved to a hard drive.
Yes. Shauna says, I want to know what you did to my family or what you told them, because she reveals to Misty that they've left and that the phone is going to some sort of disconnection announcement. And Shauna says, I don't think that either my daughter or my husband would know how to call the phone company and do that. Misty says, oh, well, did you know that your daughter killed Lottie?
She gave Shauna the big reveal.
And it was weird because Shauna was like, oh my gosh, because I thought that maybe Shauna thought that might have been a possibility, right? In all the kind of moments that she's talked about.
She
the
didn't seem
DNA,
that shocked.
She didn't seem that shocked. So I think personally, she had an idea that that could have been a possibility.
Yeah, maybe
right?
she didn't want to.
Right, but she does ask, oh, did she confess? Is she in jail? Right. So that's the important things that Shauna wants to know. And then she's like, why did she come to you or something? And then Misty said, oh, this is a great line. She said, well, she was desperate to talk to someone, and you were too busy eating your ex-girlfriend's arm.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite lines of the episode, actually.
It was good. Again, Misty coming through with all the best
Right,
lines.
and then, you know, and reiterating that she gave her that Lottie had given her the necklace, like all that stuff was all coming out. And then talking about how Callie wanted to be Lottie's friend.
Yeah.
So you should have known that this was a possibility.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So then Shauna says to Misty, oh, please give me a break. You're just as up as me.
And then, of course, Shauna is mentioning, oh, did you tell Walter?
Yeah.
So Miss Suspicious
Right,
is,
of course.
You know, back on
Loose
it again.
ends,
She's
loose
already
ends.
like going to the next target. Like, who else knows? You know,
I love it in that moment. Misty's like, you know what? I'm seriously considering, even though I don't like the Wisconsin police, I'm going to file a restraining order against you. So this is definitely like we're drawing some lines here on these relationships, and we will revisit that a little bit later on.
Yes, yes. So this was interesting. Going back to the teen timeline, we see Misty and Van.
It's the next morning, and there's a nice dusting of snow across the camp. So we do see we're getting into the winter era of 1997, 98. And I don't really know the timeline of all this stuff. I'm really curious. We're going to talk about it maybe a little bit later on. But I guess here we have them sort of using secret code to see how far along they are in fixing this sat phone, because they don't want other people maybe on Team Crazy to overhear their potential plans.
Yeah, they said something. It's warmish.
They're getting closer. They're getting closer.
Van must be off tinkering.
Yes.
You know, like kind of playing with that.
It's very intriguing. And we will get a little bit more, a peek of what's going on here a little bit later on. But for now, all of a sudden, we hear some screaming or crying or moaning over in the pen, because Akilah has discovered
Dead.
that all of her animals have died.
Yeah.
And she is absolutely distraught. And then Ty comes over to console her, which I think was wonderful. I know that the actress who plays Ty, right, Jasmine Savoy, has said she's wanted to have more scenes with Nia Zendaya, who plays Aquila. They haven't had a lot since like season 2. They had more scenes together. It's nice to see that in that moment. She comforts her and holds her hand. But then Lottie comes over and Aquila asks, why? Why did this happen? This is just like in my vision.
Yeah.
Well, you can't trust Lottie. And then Natalie says, oh, maybe this is a sign that the wilderness wants us to leave.
Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah. But crazy Lottie steps
Crazy
in.
Lottie's not having that.
No.
She said something like, we were too arrogant.
The wilderness is hungry.
It
And
wants blood.
It wants blood. You need to honor the wilderness with a sacrifice. And Natalie says, wait, we've already sacrificed. We've been spilling blood for the last 3 weeks, right? With Coach Ben, and then with the Frogger, and then Kodiak, the guide.
Yeah, but then Lottie comes up with, oh, no, we have to give of ourselves. You know, it's not enough of a sacrifice unless it is our own.
It's not honoring with faithfulness. You know, if we choose just an enemy, that doesn't count.
Yeah, it's very esoteric.
Now, you notice there was a moment between Jen and Melissa looking at each other. I thought that was really curious at the time. But of course, as the episode progresses, we can see why there was that look at one another in that moment.
Right.
Also, doesn't Mari say too?
Yeah, I think she did.
Yeah.
Boy, did she. Well.
Which I thought was interesting at the time. I'm like, why is she saying that? But we do find out later why she's saying that. So at any rate, Lottie says, yes, a hunt. We need to do a hunt. And Shauna agrees.
She agrees. At first, she's a little
Yeah.
cagey, but then she does agree. Doesn't Nat say, like, she's out?
I'm out.
Not
I'm out.
doing it. Which was very foreboding, too, because I was
Yeah.
thinking, like, oh, boy, they're just
And
going to
then
run after her.
immediately. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what they said, I think, in season 2, episode 9, when the adults are doing the hunt. And they say, you know what happens if you refuse to do the hunt?
Right.
You're automatically chosen as the person. So Shauna says, Natalie calls her back.
Yeah, and it's weird. She just went for it.
It was crazy. And then Shauna just calls out to everybody else. Is there anybody else who wants to, bow out? And it was great because there you see Hannah. She is really now part of the tribe. She's unshackled. And I swear she is so well dressed. She looks like she just stepped out of an REI catalog. I swear. They all do. They all
No, they all do, but they actually look even way more stylized.
Yes.
than that. I was going to say more of a Jean-Paul Gaultier runway
as we
show
get
in the
into
late
car draw,
90s.
and we get into the car draw. It definitely was giving those
Yeah.
vibes for sure. And did you also notice that Shauna's look, and this is a pop culture reference that we don't really know because we haven't seen the movie, but Shauna is definitely looking like Jennifer Lawrence in The Hunger Games here, that character, Katniss, because she's got that look and she's ready to go into battle. And let's be honest, these really are the Hunger Games, aren't they? So I thought that was a really clever visual tie-in to another modern film. Cute. Okay. So Shauna says, okay, tomorrow, card draw. And, whoever picks the queen card will be hunted.
Yikes.
Oh,
Here
I
we
wonder
go
if I'll
again.
sleep well tonight.
Later on in the day, we have a scene with Van and Ty discussing the card draw.
Ty wants Van to practice those cards because she wants her to rig the draw in their favor.
Right, and that was referenced in an earlier episode because they talked about, practicing the cards. So, that was alluded to that she was able to cheat.
Van says, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. The wilderness is supposed to choose. And Ty says, well, yeah, that may be the case, but you and I need to work together to protect ourselves and stay safe.
Right.
Van says, no, I can't do that because if I do that, that means that I am choosing ultimately who dies. And these are our friends. These are our teammates.
Yeah, but doesn't Ty say something like, well, Hannah isn't, so she's not really one of the friends.
Hannah is
she's
not
a
one
newcomer.
of the friends. And she's a newcomer. And Van does say something like, gives her a little bit of hope and says like, no, I can't even do that. And what's the big reveal?
The big
here?
reveal is that Ty says that you did it before with Crystal. So we then find out Crystal is actually not an illusion. Huge reveal on two levels because we have the theory that Crystal was an illusion of Misty's mind.
Yes.
So, no, Crystal was real.
Okay. So, yes, when we watched that, for sure, we both were like, oh my gosh, this is the actual reveal. Because here we have two people that are alone talking about Crystal.
This was almost as big of a moment as the frogs croaking for me.
Well, but then here I am in the middle of the night trying to sleep thinking, well, maybe they still could have said that and just been like, that was a way for them to get Misty to take the poop out to the ridge. Because Crystal might still be Misty's, imaginary friend. So if they don't like Misty and they want to keep getting Misty to do it, they fix it so that Crystal draws the card.
I don't know. I don't know.
What do you all think? Can we just officially say that Crystal was real?
I think we could say she's real.
But then how come nobody else ever talks about her?
Well,
ever?
Maybe she's going to show up later. I don't know.
I just want to underline it. Okay, let's just underline.
All right.
Okay.
You don't have to completely cross it out.
I'm so happy they brought it up. I'm so happy that her name was mentioned in this episode. But I can't fully commit to it because it is a possibility that, because, it was Misty and Crystal who took the poop bucket out to the ridge.
Yeah.
Am I crazy?
I think you're crazy. So it's the next morning, and we see that it must have snowed overnight because the head of Kodiak's head is all frosted
and
over
all the
now.
fun huts look like little Christmas cakes iced in snow.
And isn't Shauna one of the first people we see coming out of the hut?
Yeah, remember she's like waking, and there's some.
She heard some weird thing.
Shauna, and it. Did it look like the Antler Queen to you? Because that's what it kind of looked like to me. It was very blurry. Couldn't really see.
It was definitely a voice. To me, it sounded like a young voice. That's what I kept thinking. Maybe it's the baby.
And that's funny that you said that because they played that same music from her dream in episode 3, where she sees her child across the lake and she can't swim to her, and they play that kind of Rosemary's Baby-ish music.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe now more than ever, I'm starting to believe that the Antler Queen is like the Rosemary's Baby. It's the baby that died.
I love it.
But it was sacrificed.
I love
for the wilderness.
I love it. It really does tie a nice bow on that being the wilderness baby everybody was talking about from season 2. It's quite good. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so she comes out, and again, I wonder, like, what month is this? And the reason why it is important to know what month it is, and maybe we're going to have to ask Amanda G to check weather patterns in British Columbia in November and December of 1997, because they're supposed to have been there for 19 months, and we know that the crash was likely sometime in late May or early June, although apparently there is some newspaper that says the plane crash was from November, but that doesn't make sense if you go into the timeline of the reunion and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, fact of the matter is 19 months means that they would be rescued right around end of December, maybe early January.
So maybe we're getting close.
So we are getting close. Seems right. Yeah, we are getting close, but we just don't know when that first snowfall is. How much longer do they have? We'll get to it. So it's time for the card draw, people. Time for the card draw. And this is where everybody is wearing these wonderful Jean-Paul Gaultier
the outfits were incredible.
Robes. Everything is just, but it's also designed to fool you because you can't really tell who everybody is. Everybody is wearing similar pieces, and it gets very, very confusing as we get into
it's very hard to figure out who is wearing what. Except I did know who Misty was. I knew her outfit because we've seen that before.
Yes, exactly.
So I just call her the Ewok. That's the one
I love that you call her the Ewok because a couple episodes ago when she was hunting for her glasses, we thought, oh gosh, this looks like Return of the Jedi Endor. So I love that you mentioned that, and she does look like an Ewok.
Kind of Ewokish.
Yeah. At any rate, we have the card draw, and you see that Van is very nervous. Because she knows the cards are stacked. The cards are stacked. And she says, should I? And Shauna's like, yeah.
Well, I saw a lot of suspicion on Shauna's face through all of this. Sure. Does Shauna know that the cards are stacked? She could almost
pick it up right away.
Yeah, she knew.
She must have heard something, or some of her spies must have heard that this was happening, because even the first person who chooses it, which is Misty, there's this look on Shauna's face like,
She was like, oh, I can't believe she got away with it.
You know, I know. I thought she was upset that Misty wasn't the one that they were going to hunt, like, because she really wanted to hunt Misty. But then as they keep going around, and I think the next person to choose is Van, and she very confidently picks because she knows.
Yeah.
Shauna can kind of pick up on that. Then I think maybe Natalie's the next one. She also doesn't pick one. And then we're getting closer to Hannah, right? And so Shauna can see what's going on. So Shauna just decides to insert herself before Mari.
Yeah.
Ty says, you don't have to put yourself in this position, adding more risk. And Shauna's like, what do you mean? It's the same risk no matter where I am.
Yeah. She's like, I have no problem with it.
So
I think she said something like, yeah, I trust the odds.
Right, right.
She's very sure.
Oh, I was going to mention something too. Again, going back to the costumes, you do see in this moment that Natalie is wearing that kind of rose-colored raincoat. This is really that first moment that matches up to the pilot, aside from Misty, I would say. But this also matches up to the pilot because in that final feast, you see somebody wearing this kind of rose-colored raincoat. So at that moment, you're already thinking, okay, that must be Natalie, we think. Okay. Now, do you think Shauna did that because she was worried they were cooking the cards to overthrow her? Or she just wanted it to not be Hannah?
I don't know. I feel like maybe she just has a sixth sense about all of this. At this point, she's channeling this wilderness spirit so much. You see her when she's going out on the hunt.
Don't fool me.
Yeah,
Don't fool me.
She's like, she definitely has a sixth sense.
Mm-hmm.
She's in it.
Yeah.
So maybe she just had the sensibility
Right.
that like something was,
Right.
you know, she knows what is supposed to happen.
And if somebody has cooked the cards, then it is not going to appease the wilderness, as Lottie has suggested.
Right.
And
It's
they are thick as thieves now, those two crazies.
Yep.
So unfortunately, we get over to Mari.
And Mari picks the queen.
She picks the queen that was intended for Hannah. And this is a crazy moment. But I will still say this. At this time, even in this moment, I didn't necessarily think that Mari was going to be the pit girl. I wasn't sure yet, right?
But, you know,
You never know.
Yeah, you never know. So many times we've kind of gone back and forth. Like so many people have thought it's Mari,
Yeah.
and I think
From
just
the get-go,
and the way that she looked, like just the physicality. So it was always like, well, it's probably going to be Mari. And then when Hannah came along, it was like, well, maybe Hannah. I mean, they kind of have a similar physicality.
Yeah.
And you know,
I mean, I think Hannah probably looks more like the extra who played Pit Girl in the pilot. So they did a really good job of fooling us once again. But I do think it's interesting that people all along thought it was Mari because Mari was in the pilot episode. There she is on the plane. And, you know, we get to know Mari very well in season 1 and certainly into season 2. And obviously in season 3, she's a big role because in the very first episode, she literally is Pit Girl. We said It Girl, Pit Girl.
right.
We said right then and there as a joke because we thought that was, again, a misdirect. Okay, you want Mari to be Pit Girl? We'll let her be Pit Girl. She falls into the pit. We thought that was a misdirect.
Right.
So,
and she had been in that pit before, and she went back to the pit, which really sucks.
We'll get to that, but I think this was really cold when she picks the card, and then Shauna says, tough break, Mar.
Oh, yeah, tough break, Mark. She was so nonchalant about it. I was like, boy, she's not winning any fans right now. I mean, I love her. I love the Shauna character, but right now she's very dark.
I will say Sophie Nélisse really did an awesome job in this episode.
She's really turning it out.
Really strong moments that show just how demented this person is, or what we'll later find out how much thrill and excitement this character is having. And you do see it in Lottie's face as well, as she is giving
she's
that
like
30,
laughing, kind of.
the 30-second countdown.
Yeah.
And everybody's going to the table to pick up the weapons or to get on their wardrobe. And Lottie is just kind of like smiling. She's so excited.
Oh, I thought that somebody was going to say, Tina, get the axes.
Yeah.
They were picking up
It
all
was
those
wild.
kind of
And again,
accoutrements.
you do have this moment where these costumes are coming on. You're starting to see who is who in that feast. But again, it is so hard to tell because we have so many people still in. That's one of the things that I think was maybe the biggest shock for me for this moment, for the pit girl moment, was that we have so many people still part of the tribe, and there's so many more people that are there that aren't even in that original shot of the final feast. So it is very confusing, and we will get to it.
No, I wanted to say, did you notice that Mari, after she got picked, she said, "You deserve everything that's going to happen to you, to Shauna. That's coming to you." That's right. And I was like, okay, this was really interesting.
Yeah, what is she
warning.
suggesting? Yeah.
And I kept thinking, she knows what's going to happen. But
she does know that there's another plan afoot.
Right. But
Interesting.
But I mean, I took it even further.
Yeah, of course.
Than that.
Of course.
Like
on an esoteric level.
On an esoteric level of like your whole
family,
life, your whole whatever.
Yeah. But in that moment, she also knows that something's going to happen.
Right.
So
she's in on the plan.
Maybe the plan was to leave Shauna behind, maybe.
Oh, yeah, totally. They were going to like, bye.
So Shauna gives her the necklace, puts the necklace on her.
Yep.
And then as she's turning around, first of all,
she makes her take off the big coat. She's just left with that signature sport top.
Very 90s look. And
two-tone
they can tell that, everybody else is in these kind of outfits, but Mari is not. She's in her street clothes, if you will. And then there's a tussle for the knife, right? She takes the knife, but then gets it back. And then there's a turn to drunk Travis.
Oh, yeah, he's been drinking that berry wine again.
Yeah, this is a trippy moment here.
This was weird stuff, and I also maybe have a theory on this, too.
Okay.
But
now, first of all, we have, again, this character of Travis, who, if you just join us on our podcast, we've been talking about the Travis and how sometimes it feels like he's, like, underused this season. We're trying to figure out, like, what his point is, what his role is. But I think we do know that he is mostly suffering through the loss of his brother. He felt that he really wasn't there to protect him at the end of the last season. So he's struggling with that, and I think he struggles with that going into his life after the rescue. But he's been drinking, at certain times here. And in this moment, Shauna says, if you're not going to join in the hunt, then you need to get out of the way.
And she threatens him like she's going to, like she says something like, you'd be the second.
Yeah, you want me to make it 2 for 2 with your brother?
Yeah, I was like, wow, you really are being evil here.
Wow.
But, he came back with these remarks that were very strange.
He says, none of this is real. Haven't you ever wondered whose reality we're in?
Yes, and this is where I started getting into another mindset about all this stuff, because he mentions that
he says some of my thoughts are hobbies.
Yeah, some of my thoughts are hobbies, and then he mentions some of his thoughts are Jackie's.
Some of my favorite thoughts are of Jackie.
And doesn't he say something about them fooling around at
so,
slumber parties?
Yes, because Lottie says something like, Lottie tells Shauna, let him go, because she doesn't want him to die, right? Leave Travis alone. But he has been he's goading Shauna about Jackie, saying that, because remember there was a scene a couple episodes back after Shauna and Melissa came back from cutting Coach Ben's Achilles heel, and Travis clocked that Shauna and Melissa were a couple, and he was like, okay. That's why Shauna looked so upset with me when I went off with Jackie at the Doom Coming.
Right.
So that's what he's talking about there. Okay. He slept with Jackie. That's why you were so jealous. Right?
Yeah,
so
but
animosity there.
Right. But I was wondering if he actually knew, like, is he tuned in, like he's saying, like, has he seen this stuff firsthand?
I don't know.
And I wondered, okay, just weird concepts here. Just, placate me. I don't know.
Yes, sure.
Could there be something that when because of the wilderness and the fact that they've eaten a piece of these people, are they able to be part of them?
Well, somebody in this episode decided to do that, didn't they?
They sure did. And that happens a little later. We'll go back and talk about that. But
Travis ate a part of Javi.
Yeah.
Travis ate a part of Jackie.
Yeah.
So that's a very good thing that you're picking up on. I think that's valid.
Now, the other thing that's kind of so weird about
By the way, there is a monster behind you. Still, I don't think we can see her. You want to just move so you can see that she's there?
She's starting to wake up. It's the first. We usually don't let her in here because she'll disturb.
She's too wily usually, but Susie has been sitting there.
She's been sleeping.
I love it. Here she comes. Here she comes.
You better not break anything. Okay.
So now we are actually in the hunt itself. We have Ty and Shauna, and they are looking thick as thieves out there, right? And it's interesting, I think, because they do end up being pretty tight, as you know, in the adult timeline. Well,
For
maybe
a
up until this
while.
episode.
Until this episode.
But you know, they're on the hunt for Mari, and then we switch over to Mari, and this is the moment where you absolutely know that Mari is officially the pit girl, because she takes off her street clothes, and underneath she does have on that white nightgown.
Yeah, the white nightie, which is...
And in order to take off her pants, she has to take off her shoes, so she is also now barefoot.
Right. And then...
These are the elements of pit girl.
Right.
Here we go. We can mark off also on our theory list, Ashley Sutton is not pit girl. Ashley Sutton is not pit girl. So Mari heads off in some direction. We head back over to Shauna and Ty. And now Shauna is actually confronting Ty about what happened with that card draw, because she thinks that something was fishy.
Mm-hmm.
And Ty says, oh, you better back up now.
Yeah, you
Right?
better back up.
That was crazy. She says, if you know what's good for you, you'll back down now.
She's not scared of Shauna.
Yeah.
She's actually on equal footing with her.
Right? Because
So-
Shauna is actually, she backs down in that moment.
Yeah.
So anyway, the hunt is going to continue, though, but we're going to come back to them in a moment, because now we have our little Natalie in the little rose-colored raincoat.
Right. While all this craziness is going on, she's running out to the little area where she's hidden the sat phone.
Yeah.
So she's digging it out
She
or whatever.
digs it out, and then you notice that somebody is watching this happen. You don't know who it is. We were kind of figuring, like, who's missing from this hunt? Like, who are we not seeing? Maybe it was Robin or Hannah, because again, it's so hard
Maybe
to
it
tell.
might be Hannah. I don't know.
Yeah. And then we have Jen, and Jen meets up with Ty and Shauna, and Jen says, oh, hey, Ty, Van is injured over here. I'm wondering if you can come with me. And then Shauna says, oh, come on. That is a ploy. Because I think, doesn't Jen say something like, oh, she's over by the ridge. She hurt her ankle.
Yeah, she hurt her ankle, sprained her ankle.
Yeah.
Which was like, okay, they're going to push her off the ridge.
That's what
that
I
was
thought.
the plan.
That's what
I
I
think
thought.
at this point, you know, that beginning scene that we saw Van give the weird look or whatever, it's all starting to come together that there is a plot
Yeah.
to get rid of Shauna.
Yeah. And I think Ty says, oh, you know, I'm going to go check it out. And then Shauna, she says, Shauna, you're being paranoid. And I thought, oh my God, Shauna paranoid?
Never. Never.
But Shauna's like, okay, fine. You go take care of her. And that is when Shauna just completely loses it. And she howls.
Yeah, she starts howling. I was like, this is so weird. She's getting real.
She is nuts.
Yeah, she
And
is definitely off the rails.
I
at this
think
point.
that's the time where because she has this hat on, and then she kind of repositions the hat.
Right.
And it appears to be, in my opinion, it looks like Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right.
Now, from the preview, we saw this, and I was like, I caught it right away. But in the preview, we thought it was Akilah that was
Right.
wearing that, because she had the same kind of sweater thing.
The
that was
sweater
wrapped around
was
the hood.
similar, but the hat
So
was...
we're going to cross that off again. That was one of our theories that we had added. Akilah is Jack Skellington costume. No,
Nope.
it's not. Shauna is the Jack Skellington costume, which also means that in the final feast, Shauna is not the rabbit. We thought Shauna was the rabbit because when they were force feeding Ben long time ago, Shauna was the rabbit in that moment. Van was the skunk, or had the balaclava over her face, and Travis had the bear. We'll call it the butcher apron.
Yeah,
the bearskin
butcher's
butcher
the
apron, which Misty ends up wearing later on, looking like the Ewok. So this is really interesting because it does kind of shatter one of my theories, which was that the people in the feast are always wearing the same outfit, right?
Yeah, I think they're always swapping
They're
them out.
always swapping them out, right? So again, Shauna is not the rabbit in the final feast. Van actually is the skunk. She is the skunk. She retains that all the way through. So we can circle that now
She's a
as
skunk.
the truth. Now, we'll get back to the rabbit, but right now let's talk about the Jack Skellington. It's really interesting. I don't know if you saw that movie. Did you ever see?
Oh, I've seen it, yeah.
So if you remember,
What
Jack
year did it come
Skellington-
out?
It came out in 93.
Oh, okay, well, that's
So
perfect
that would
timing.
have been before. They would have been very aware of this movie. And the character Jack Skellington, he's the mayor of Halloween Town, but he wants more. He wants more out of his normal, boring life.
Oh.
So he tries to take on Christmas as well.
Right.
Right?
Right. I remember.
And so he's generally considered like, I guess, kind of like a protagonist, like a heroic character, but he makes mistakes. And so he kind of comes to term at the end and realizes that he's been too selfish or whatever. So he has to kind of pull back. So eventually he goes back to his Halloween town and he, appreciates it more, but he definitely is on sort of like a power trip.
Yeah. That's a good tie-in.
The cuss banks up there.
Cuss banks up there.
But anyway, I like that a lot, that she has that particular mask. And I thought I had seen it maybe in that first Antler Queen shot from the pilot, but when I look back on it now, I see that, no, that's Ty. That's Ty sitting down there. And this is a new one that was revealed in this episode. I love that. All right, so now we have Natalie kind of sensing that there's somebody following her, and she kind of pushes her up against a tree. This is a moment we saw in the promo as well. And she reveals it's Hannah.
Yeah.
And this is great because Hannah does really reveal her intentions that we were questioning from the last episode. She says, listen, I am just like you. I just want to get home. I just want to do whatever I can to survive. So the scene ends, and we don't know where this is going to go, but we will find out later, and it is fascinating.
Also separated from the group is Aquila, and she's headed back over to the caves, which was another kind of weird moment.
My heart pumping.
Yeah.
Because you notice when she pauses in front of the cave, you see footprints in the snow, and I thought, oh gosh, who is going to be in that cave?
Yeah. And surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
Crazy Lottie's in there.
Oh my God.
With,
do you know she has this like new headdress with all these feathers?
Yeah, I noticed.
Really
I kept
wild.
thinking, where did she get that?
Where are the seamstresses out there in the wilderness?
It was like a goose feather, Bjork dress.
I was going to mention, I'm
dress.
glad you mentioned Bjork because the sound effects or the sound design in this whole sequence did remind me a lot of the Bjork album Vespertine, which has very wintry vibes.
Oh, you know what?
I kind of clicking in the electronic noises.
Said it was very much like, it felt like I was in a new age bookstore in the 80s.
Whenever Aquila is on the screen, they always play those chimes.
Playing that weird chime music.
Just in general, this whole hunt, the sound effects are very unsettling, right? Because you have all these kind of like trippy electronic blips and cuts and blips, and then you also have, of course, the howling in the background and the bacaw bacaw.
What about that creaking too? There was a part.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was in this section.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there was
kind of like
there were these
electronic
weird tree creaking. I could hear like.
It was great. Great job, sound design. Loved it. Now we're in the cave though, and we do have this interaction between Aquila and Lottie. And Lottie immediately says she can sense that Aquila's behind her. She says, wow, that must have been really hard for you to do that.
That's what I'm saying. Lottie knows everything.
She does have some way of seeing through everything because, and we had watched a couple times, don't get me wrong, we see Aquila talking to Jen, Mari, and Melissa. This is Team Sane minus Natalie and maybe Misty, who might have been busy working on the sat phone. This is a plan. They are going to incite a hunt so that they can maybe push Shauna off a cliff or whatever, right? This is the plan. And so Aquila goes so far as to kill her beloved animals. She poisons them.
I was really sad that was what happened. But again, it affirmed everything we were kind of thinking at the very beginning, the looks. So they had plotted this.
Yeah.
There's dissension in the ranks.
It's a gamble.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it didn't really pay off, or kind of partially paid off, I guess. But we lose Mari.
Yeah.
Soon, right? Before we get to that, though, we do have to talk about this interaction between Lottie and Aquila, because Aquila comes clean and says, listen, Lottie, these visions were not real. Travis told me this is all BS. And Lottie still tries to placate her and says, no, the visions have come true, And this is where it's really weird, because Aquila has picked up a rock.
Right, but we don't see her strike Lottie.
We don't see her strike Lottie. And to me, it feels like Lottie is not threatened at all. If Lottie can tell that Aquila's behind her, I'm pretty sure Lottie can tell that she's also picked up a rock, right?
Yeah.
But Lottie is not threatened. Lottie says something to Aquila like, hey, something like...
So she said, we're connected to it, and this place is connected to us.
Right, but Akilah says, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
But then Lottie says, oh, no, this place is in us, and it will follow us even when we go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the moment when Akilah had the rock in her hand that she thought, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to have this be my story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you sense her, she's kind of putting it down. But this is where I get a little concerned because, and we had to watch this several times. I did not see Akilah again for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, and that's a little worrying. However, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here because I think that in that scenario, they would have said something had they not seen her. They would have been like, Shauna would have been like,
I know,
"Where's
but
Akilah?"
there's so much confusion going on. There's so much going on, especially what happens in the very next scene. Lottie makes that out of the cave. We see Lottie a lot throughout the rest of the episode, but when you look at the clothing that they are wearing underneath these animal skins, you do not see the turquoise sleeve with the bright purple kind of gloves.
Well,
you do see somebody who looks similar to Akilah, Brit, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Same coloration maybe in the face. That's all you can see. And she is also wearing a more muted color turquoise and a more muted color purple.
it's just very tricky because they're all wearing different outfits than what they normally would wear.
I don't know. I'm just really concerned about this Akilah loophole here because it's seemingly been left in the cave, and we know what can happen in the cave. I do think in general we've come to realize that there are a lot more survivors at this point than we ever imagined, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, outside of the cave, we have this big, huge moment. Here it is.
We are going back into time, so to speak. We're going back to episode 1, really.
Yeah.
We're seeing
this is the matchup moment.
The matchup footage, if
it's the same footage.
It is the same footage.
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely is the same footage of Mari running towards the pit curl. I think they did a pretty good job of that sequence of matching it up pretty well. I bought it. I bought it that was Mari.
Tripping and cutting the foot.
Yeah, she trips and cuts the foot
blood
first.
Is
and the
on
blood
the
is the
one footprint.
They do show a quick shot of some sort of like little stick figure thing that's in the tree, which you do see in the pilot episode as well. You also see the carved eye in the bark.
What is the carved eye in the bark?
Never seen before except for the pilot, and here it is again. This is something they never bothered to show in any of these other 27 episodes of the show. So to me, that is a moving forward hanging thread into a season 4 right there.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's Lottie kind of seeing this happen, and this was really interesting because Lottie says to her, she even gives her like a hint, like, you see where we are?
Yeah.
She says, you've been here already, and you can let it be different.
Right.
So Lottie knows that this is where the pit is because just last episode, she saw that Travis had constructed the pit that he had planned to have her fall through.
Right.
And Lottie also knows that Mari fell into the pit at the beginning of the season.
Right. She fell into the pit once.
Came back. Right.
She fell into the pit twice.
So unfortunately, Mari cannot see that this is where the pit is. It just looks too different in the snow. And she's also being chased by, 11, 12 people.
If you were being chased by 12 people, you might not be thinking very clearly.
Yeah. So it's getting really intense. In fact, we have also getting closer to the shit ridge. We have Jen bringing Ty closer to the ridge, and then Van kind of foils her plans because Van was supposed to have a broken ankle, but she doesn't, right? So they hear howling, and they go back towards the pit. Meanwhile, you also have Shauna being whacked by the rabbit.
Right. That was cool. And then the rabbit is trying to choke her.
Yes.
And then we find out who the rabbit is, don't we?
Yes. And this was really interesting. Okay. When we had the feeding of Ben, the force feeding, and Shauna was wearing the rabbit outfit, we put on here that Shauna was the rabbit, I always thought that was really interesting because, Shauna in her house had all of those rabbits, all of those little tiny rabbit sculptures, the ceramic rabbits. They were gifted to her by Jackie's mother every year on the occasion of her birthday because Jackie liked rabbits.
Right.
And remember, Shauna killed the rabbit and ate the rabbit early on in the first season. So there's always this connection to the rabbit. So I thought when Shauna first put on that rabbit outfit, that was a way for her to kind of connect herself to Jackie and give Jackie sort of like a voice out here in the wilderness, right? Now that she's gone. And it was underlined, that concept to me was underlined when now Melissa is wearing what I would say the Jackie's persona,
outfit.
Right? Jackie's getting some revenge as well in this moment. I loved that. So she's pushing that stick against Shauna, who's just a total you-know-what in the last episode to her, if you remember. And you can see Shauna's turning blue there for a little bit, and she just can't do it. And she kind of stumbles off. And then once again, Shauna delivers one of these lines.
She said, I knew you'd be boring or something to that effect, right? That same line she kind of said.
Yeah, the same line from, I don't know, their second date, if you will.
Turned out to be boring.
Turned out to be boring after all.
Yeah.
Shauna. All right. So sadly, now we do finally have to match up everything for this pit girl sequence, right? It is the same footage of that person falling into the pit. They did a really great job, I think. It sold it to me that it was Mari. And then you do have also the sequence of Van coming up. And it is some of the same footage, although I think they might have reshot some of it so you could see that it was Van underneath. But she shows up to the edge of the pit and she is wearing those pink Converse. It's the same thing. And then you have some other people joining. And to me, that was Travis's outcome right there.
Right,
the
drawing.
So I think at this point, we can go back to that. And we can officially say that Travis's drawing is the reverse angle of the pit, which is what we had thought way back during the trial. Moments later, we have Van and Ty, and Van is just completely broken as to, what just occurred. Why? Because she ultimately rigged the cards that led to Mari's death. But Ty tries to console her and says, we did the best we could, right? It was Shauna who foiled their plan. And then Van just says, but it was Mari.
I was sad because, again, I think we've all grown to love that character.
For sure, this season.
Now, the only thing about Mari is, some people have said this before, and I'll say it again. They say maybe she wasn't the most clever character.
Yeah.
But and maybe that's part of her demise too. Is like she didn't really figure out that she'd been there before.
Exactly.
But still, she was very likable.
Yeah,
and
she always had great one-liners. She had some really good lines.
And in real life, she's actually dating Kevin Elvis, right? So I think that's cute.
I think that's cool because I think that if it does go into season 4, obviously Kevin Elvis will still be in it, and she will not. So that relationship won't affect the filming of the show.
Yes.
Now, I will say in this moment that, Van struggling with this what just happened with Mari does really factor into her death as an adult, right? When Lauren Ambrose says, I just wish I could be this person, but I can't. It really does factor back to this same moment here. I thought that was a nice throwback to that because you want to give that death as much weight as possible. So I thought that was good. But of course we have Shauna the badass coming in again.
Yep.
She says, take out the stakes, fill up the pit, and then she
I thought that was interesting because I guess now the thinking is that there's only going to be one death in the pit.
Right. They're not going to use the pit again.
Yeah. The pit won't be used anymore, I guess.
I guess because they realize that if that was used as a trap once, no one's ever going to fall for that again. No pun intended.
Right.
So then Shauna sees Ty and Van. She says, hey, what's the holdup?
Yeah, and then doesn't she ask Van and Ty to do the preparations?
Yeah, you have a feast to prepare.
You have a feast to prepare. That's the thing. Are they that hungry?
I know, they just had Kodiak, I'm assuming. I mean, how
Yeah.
much time has passed? But then you have, I guess maybe they feel like they need to eat the sacrifice right away or it doesn't count.
Doesn't taste as good.
Doesn't taste as good, right? So then we swap over to other shots from the pilot. They kind of intersperse some of the stuff. And I felt this was a little bit more clumsy of editing because they kind of like showed like a little wipe or whatever, because maybe it doesn't quite match up. But anyway, they have the body strung upside down, and then Shauna gave the knife to who we believe is Natalie, again wearing that rose-colored raincoat, to slash her and let the blood drain out. But I'm not sure at that time, was it already somebody else, possibly, right?
Right.
At any rate, when she says, when you're done with that, bring me her hair. Wow.
Which, of course, we know what that means.
Yeah.
We'll see it later.
Yeah. We know what it means. And, you know, we failed to mention this in the last episode. Apparently, when she was in her fun hut the night that Hannah killed Kodiak and she was kind of like listening, she was twirling Hannah's hair from the twig, maybe.
Okay.
So, yeah. Anyway, it's weird, though, that Lottie envisioned this look in her dream, and then Shauna, I guess Lottie helps put it together for her.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
I guess.
Because that netting, that is the Antler Queen's netting, is Lottie's little overdress she wears a couple episodes back.
Oh, okay. All right.
So that's what it is. Lottie is putting together the outfit with her cohort, Shauna, her crazy cohort, to make the Antler
Well,
Queen.
again, they
Bowing
must
down,
have gone
bowing
to
down.
what is it?
FIDM?
FIDM, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yes, of course.
Oh my gosh. Where's the mood? The mood fabric.
They were at St. Martin's working on their fashions for the show.
Now, we were just talking about Van's death and how maybe there's more weight to it after what we just saw with the card draw. So let's go back to the adult timeline, because there's a little piece that we didn't cover earlier, and I think it's time we do so. We have Ty and Shauna in the car coming back from Virginia.
Yeah, and it's a real, like, depressing car ride, as usual.
Super tense. Ty does not want to hear any of Shauna's excuses, nor does she want any of her help. She tells Shauna, pull over here.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think they decide to bury her? Ty is going to bury Van out.
In
I
the
just
wilderness.
answered my own question. She wants to bury her in the wilderness.
She's gonna
Oh
bury
my
her in
gosh.
the wilderness,
Oh
wrapped
my
in a
gosh.
carpet.
Hello.
Hey,
Yeah, wrapped in a
that's
carpet.
what everybody does. Haven't you watched crime shows?
Right.
Dateline.
Do you think that's going to come up?
Oh, I don't. Maybe they'll be on
Wow.
Dateline next.
Oh, that's intriguing.
That would be fun if
Keith
Keith-
Morrison gets involved. Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God. Okay, so this is
Or
actually
the other lady.
This is important. This is important. Let's not make too much light of it. So we have Ty rolling her girlfriend Van into a grave that she has dug,
Yeah, it was really
and it was
depressing.
really heartbreaking. But then, wow,
But-
because she has a knife. And you think, okay, she says something like, I will always remember everything. I will always remember you. But then she takes out a knife and really violently, she plunges it through the carpet and into Van. And then magically, she pulls out her heart and she starts eating it.
She starts eating it.
Now, what's important about this is that this is the first official voluntary cannibalism in the adult timeline. Because in the last episode, or whatever, the episode where Shauna force feeds, a piece of Melissa's arm to herself, she chews it, and then she spits
it
out.
back out. Yeah.
Now, of course, she did also then go crazy afterwards, Melissa, right?
Yeah.
So we were thinking maybe that was the moment where she swapped over to being crazy. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But here we have Ty doing it, and we don't know what this is going to mean necessarily. But I like that you were talking about Travis earlier and about how when you ingest some of these people, they are part of you, because that is clearly what Ty wants to do here.
Yeah.
She wants to ingest Van inside of her so that she is always there and she will always remember her. Wow, that was
always
wild.
something there to remind me.
Do. But, maybe in a couple hours it'll not be in her anymore.
Maybe not.
Oh, jeez. Later on with Ty, we
Yeah.
have her sitting at a diner.
I thought at first that maybe she was talking to other Ty, because it's
Yeah.
just her
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah.
and you're not seeing who she's speaking to. And I was thinking, like, okay, she's totally gone off the rails.
I thought after eating Van,
Yeah.
she is now just talking to other Ty. I thought the same thing. Now, did you notice the correlation to, again, the pilot episode? Because at the end of that episode, Ty is at a diner with Shauna, and they're talking about keeping these secrets. That was the whole thing. That was the whole point of that conversation was, hey, listen, we should be fine as long as we keep these secrets, right?
Right, I remember that.
But Shauna was upset with Ty because she was the one who was running for a Senate seat, and that was bringing up a potential for there to be some secrets spilled. But here we have Ty talking to a mystery person for a while, or maybe herself, we don't know. Or I thought maybe it was adult Aquila.
Oh, well, it wasn't.
And basically she is listing all of the things that Shauna has done that fly in the face of exactly what they had made their plans back in that same episode, which was, we got to keep the secrets. We have to protect each other. This is the only way that we can survive in this world, right? And I think
clearly she's so angry, though.
she is so angry. She sees it as Shauna being culpable for Van's death.
Yep.
She also says, though, that she's culpable for Natalie's death as well. Why? No matter what, all this was brought up by all the things that Shauna has done, or all the people that she's connected to, right? Like even like, say, Jeff and his extortion plot. All this stuff has rustled all this crazy stuff up.
Adam.
But then she also mentions that finally Ty says, wow, and I didn't remember until like now how insanely excited Shauna was by this stuff in the wilderness, how thrilled she was.
Yeah,
by
she
all
said
this,
she was
how
fueled by it, and she thrived on it.
She thrived on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that moment then we are brought over and we see that she is talking to Misty.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. It makes sense. She's talking to Misty. We might have assumed she was talking to Misty. And I think the big thing here, a big reveal, is that Ty says to Misty, if we don't do something to stop her, she is going to end up the last one standing. She asks Misty, you don't want that, do you? What does she say?
Misty says, no, I definitively do not. Now, and then right after this, who do we see watching them?
Whoa. This was quite a reveal.
This was kind of really weird, and I did a little bit of a deep dive, too. So
we kind of see through the window of the diner that there's a car parked outside, and I don't know if it goes like directly zooms in or if it cuts away, but then it kind of like blurry, and then it kind of becomes clear, and you see that it is Walter in the car watching the two of them, and the look on his face is so cold and scary.
And there's no show tunes being played this time.
No
around.
show tunes. No
it's-
Barbra Streisand.
No, he's playing Slayer. He's like playing speed metal.
This is not the Walter that we know.
Well, so
and
no,
love.
I've heard of Slayer, and maybe I've heard it like years ago. It's from like 1986.
Yeah.
But when I pulled up the lyrics,
This particular
this
song.
okay,
What's it
just
called?
want to read this. It's called "Raining Blood,"
Oh.
and this is the first line. It says, "Trapped in purgatory, a lifeless object alive, awaiting reprisal. Death will be their acquittance. The sky is turning red. Return to power draws near. Fall into me. The sky's crimson tears abolish the rules made of stone," and then it carries on, right?
Wow. Okay.
But so the weird thing was, I kept thinking about the concept to how when we're seeing these weird airplane images, or like, after the death or whatever.
Right.
I don't know. Now, is it possible? I'm not Catholic, so I don't really know all the nuances about purgatory, but what I do understand is, like, after you die, it's supposed to be the place where you're shown all your sins or whatever.
Right.
Now, is it possible
it's like the waiting room between, heaven and hell is purgatory.
Right. So, I mean, is it possible that maybe the whole adult timeline is purgatory? That maybe it's not real, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so weird to
I
me.
mean, I think it does factor into what was said between the two Vans on the plane in the last episode, right? Adult Van says, "Oh, I found the treasure. I saved Ty, but now I'm dead. Like, where's the treasure in that?" Or, and young Van says, "Oh, surviving this was never meant to be the reward," which I take it as, okay, if surviving all of this isn't the reward, then dying is the reward. Dying is the reward because what they are all living right now, currently in their adult life, is this purgatory. It's this never-ending cycle of paranoia and, thinking when the next shoe is going to drop, who's going to come after you, who's going to find out about the secret, who do you have to kill the secret so it doesn't get out. That's what all this is going on. So really the escape from that is the reward. And I think that's interesting that those lyrics are the ones
I
that
just thought it was
Walter
so
has,
weird.
because Walter is the one that is trying to deliver Misty from this, but she keeps getting trapped with these people. Even after now Shauna may be out of the picture because of all this stuff, with Misty, now she's just back with Ty,
Right.
And so that's why Walter is pissed off. Don't you think?
Yeah, but the other thing that is interesting about seeing Walter again and seeing him in this light is I can't help think that there's got to be another big connection that, maybe
something more personal than just love for
maybe
Misty.
he still is the one who left the phone for Shauna in the restaurant.
Yeah, I know.
With the Queen of Hearts.
I was gonna
maybe, he's related to, he could be Hannah, her brother. I don't know.
Hannah and her sisters.
Hannah and her brothers, Hannah and her sisters.
Yeah.
Who knows?
yeah.
I don't know. There's got to be something else
Right.
going down with him.
Well, it was weird, and it definitely gives us a nice hanging thread for a potential season 4, and we like to see that. We like to see that when we love this show so much. Now, we're going to go over to the closing scene of The Adults, which is Shauna in the kitchen. She is cooking up some, it's not, spare ribs from their friend, right?
No, it's a hot
not
pocket.
rump roast.
It's
just
like a hot
pocket.
I think it's a microwave hot pocket.
And I do think this is a purposeful moment here where they're showing how boring her life is right now, that she's eating something in a microwave instead of carving up her friends.
Well, they did show she was drinking, I think, vodka.
Yeah,
straight
totally,
out through the
totally.
bottle. Woo!
So at that moment, she checks her phone again, and she does see that she's gotten a text from Jeff that says, "Hey, listen, we are both safe. We just need some space. Please stop calling."
Texting or whatever, yeah.
So in that moment, she looks out of the corner of her eye, and she sees that there's something under the refrigerator.
Yeah, a little poking out.
Here it is, everybody. This is the missing letter we have been looking for.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't recall if at the time, maybe we did see it.
I don't remember this exact specific moment. This was definitely new footage they were showing.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember from a photo still, a publicity photo still of Jeff kind of putting his hands up on the door frame. So obviously he startled Callie when she's opening this up, and the letter falls out and she just doesn't even notice. So it slips underneath the refrigerator, and Shauna finds it. And this is really, really important moment here. Okay. Because, when you open up the letter, they show it, and basically it is exactly what Melissa said that it was in that episode a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
It spells it out that it was all about her sort of saying she was sorry for pretending that she was dead, and for her saying that she sent the tape because she's been really working really hard to better her life and integrate her life and put all that behind her, and she was hoping the same for Shauna. Obviously they had a relationship, even if it was for 6 months or so out in the wilderness, that was really tight, and she's reflecting back on that, and she wants the same for Shauna. And it's a very powerful thing if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because if she had gotten that letter when it was intended, then Van wouldn't have died.
Right.
And maybe Lottie wouldn't have died either. Think about it.
Yeah.
Because the tape would have been explained right then and there, and it would not have been a threatening thing.
Right. They would have
Right?
known the reason behind
The
it was.
brakes would have been just the brakes, which the mechanic said that's what that was. We know that Misty put her into the freezer. So all you have left is that Queen of Hearts thing, which again could technically be explained away by it being a ringtone, but still could be Walter. I'll give you that. But whatever it is, it's not Melissa. Melissa did not stalk her. She purposely gave her the tape for reflection, and this is what it was. And if she had known that, all that paranoia wouldn't have come into play. And also Callie wouldn't have been so freaked out about all this stuff. So maybe they both would still be alive. So now Shauna has all this guilt, not just those things, but all the other things that have happened. She thinks about Adam. She thinks about, all these things that she's responsible for.
And she's sitting there alone in the house. I mean, at this point, I would say it's rock bottom moment.
I would say it's rock bottom.
And I
would say
think
it's rock bottom.
one of the things that I kept thinking about, so she takes out a pad of paper from
The Jolly Hitcher memo pad.
and she's writing It's almost like just not a confessional, but
I thought maybe it was a suicide.
I was
note
thinking
of
it was a
hers.
suicide note.
But then
maybe.
you kind of see the way it's kind of informal in a way almost. It's like it's a journal
Well,
entry.
and remember,
it's her first journal entry.
Right. And when she was young, that was her whole thing, right? She had all her journals. This is like she's going back to her youthful roots, right?
And do you notice the tone of adult Shauna's voice, played by Melanie Linsky, is suddenly more, in a way, childlike, if you will? It's definitely gentler. It's more just kind of matter of fact. She's kind of come to terms with what really was going on out there. And she explains that the reason why they all forgot about how terrible it was, all the things that they did, is because at the time, it was so much fun.
Yeah, it was so exciting.
It was so thrilling. They were having so much fun.
Right. She mentions when you have survivor's guilt, typically the people will forget things because they're so traumatized. But they're kind of like the reverse, that they were so thrilled by it, but they forgot.
They wanted to kind of hold on to that thrill. And to do that, they have to forget about all the bad aspects of it. She says that in that time, she was not a wife or a mother. She was a warrior, and she was a queen.
She said she was a fucking queen.
Yeah, that's what she said. And of course, they are intercutting this with the scenes of them dressing her as the Antler Queen. So here we have officially Shauna is the Antler Queen,
at least dressed, for now. At least for now,
as dressed by her teammates. Right? You have Melissa tying one of the pieces of hair onto her, and you obviously have Lottie helping her with that headdress that is partially her
and
netting.
Of course the team of stylists behind the scenes.
Yes,
everybody's
of course,
like hair and makeup. Yes. She's looking stunning.
Yes. So now we can cross off the list.
Cross it off, baby.
We can cross it off. The list finally.
Cross that list.
So the Antler Queen is Hannah.
No.
A First Nation Native Peoples nature spirit. No.
Nope.
It is Shauna. What do you think about
Siddiqui.
What did you think about that?
I was impressed because, again, I didn't expect it was going to be her. I felt...
From the get-go, we always knew this show was about Shauna. Or we felt she was the central character. And it's certainly ramping up in this particular season. So it makes perfect sense. But they were just completely throwing us a huge red herring in Lottie, who, basically envisions the Antler Queen, if you will, but gives that to Shauna. She sees so much power in her. And maybe because Lottie knows that, like, mentally she could never do that, right? If you go back to season 2, right, when Shauna kicks the shit out of Lottie after, the whole thing with Misty and the baby and all that kind of stuff, that is when Lottie decides to give this up. Because remember, when Lottie's upstairs in the attic, and she's not doing well, and when they're all freaking out about what they're going to do, everybody else decides, oh, it must be Lottie who wants us to do the card draw and do the hunt. And then when Misty tells them what has happened with Javi, Lottie's like, no, that's not at all what I intended.
Right.
I didn't want that.
She's not as much of a hard ass.
She's not.
She wouldn't have been able to handle it.
But she's impressed by it in Shauna, obviously, and she wanted that baby from nature. So it's really cool how it's like a full circle.
It is a full circle moment
of this show.
And I will say, what I liked is, I mean, we're not quite finished with this episode, but what I'm saying about the way that the episode was handled for the finale, what I'm pleased about is that, yes, a lot of things have been tied up, but it hasn't all been tied up. So
we do have this moment where Shauna says that, this is adult Shauna journaling, saying, I've lost that feeling in my present day, I guess, and she thinks it's now time to reclaim it.
She's ready to go, which I was like, I kind of got a little scared there.
Yeah, because if this is what the non-connected Shauna has been doing, what is going to happen when the connected Shauna gets into mode?
Yeah, she's been not intentionally going down that road, and now she's intentional.
Right.
So what we can see is there's going to be a full-on war between Ty, Misty, Melissa, and Shauna.
Right. And anybody else who may have survived. And let's talk about it. So we show the feast, and then we show, again, some of the matching up scenes. They don't show that shot from that pilot where it's like the 7 of them maybe and Misty coming, because there's so many more. There's actually still Jen is there, and Britt and Robin. Still didn't see Akila, by the way, but we'll get to that. So it's like the next morning, and they're showing them all there as well. Then we go back to the camp.
Yeah.
This is great.
It's a great moment.
This is a great moment.
I love this.
And so Shauna is like, she comes up to Natalie's fun hut, I guess, and she's like, so Natalie, are you going to tell me what happened with all that? Like, there was obviously some shenanigans going on. Tell me what's going on. And then she doesn't respond. Again, this is a person wearing the rose-colored raincoat. So
this was still, I'm going to just say, I mean, I love the outcome, but I would just say the way that Shauna's character is, how she's so intuitive about all these different things going on. I find it a little bit of a stretch that she wouldn't know that
First of all, they did have kind of charcoaled,
yeah,
makeup,
I know,
so
but
kind of disguise them a little bit more. And there was so much going on with the Mari and the Melissa and the feast and the Antler Queen.
But right there in that moment, she's right next to her.
Yeah, well, in that moment, she pulls it down and she sees that it is Hannah. So immediately she turns to everybody else and she's like, "Where is Natalie?" And you can see these looks, and I can't verify
They're
this completely.
all in on it.
But it did look like Travis was in on it. He was like, like this.
Oh, yeah.
And then even, I don't know if it was it Misty? can't remember who else was there, but it was,
it was
Misty.
Misty looked happy.
Misty's definitely there because
she knows what's going on.
Because they do show her in that scene where she's taking off the thing and she puts on her glasses and she smiles. Now that is a different shot from the pilot. The original shot is in the pilot and it's a little different.
They try to match it up.
They're trying to match it, but I don't know. I kind of feel like in this moment, Misty didn't look as like weathered as she did in the pilot.
I think she looked more frostbitten.
Yeah. But anyway, it's okay. So she smiles because she knows that the plan is moving forward. Natalie has the sat phone and she has run all the way up to the top peak that she can find, set to the tune of "Living on the Edge" by Aerosmith. That is another 90s hit. And this is a great moment.
She's got the machine on and she's calling out. And she's like, "Hello." And at first it's not working, right?
Right.
But then you hear that kind of, I don't know, it almost sounds like a fax machine. Like, and she says hello. And then she says, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" And somebody says, "I can hear you." I was just like, I've got goosebumps.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
That was just like, oh my God.
I was so scared because I don't know if you saw the promo where they did like the
I'm crying.
They did like the Yellowjackets spoilers promo where they had all the actors talking about the biggest moments from the season, and then they beeped out everything they said. And at some point, someone said, "Oh yeah," and then it falls over the edge. And I thought, oh my gosh, does the sat phone fall over the edge in that moment, and then it's gone? I was like, oh no, but no. I mean, somebody's made contact in that moment.
Well,
so
we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
I was very happy and surprised to see that come together. I think, they did a good job of keeping the viewer in kind of suspense, so to speak, because we didn't quite know what was going on.
It's funny because, you can say that this is quite literally a cliff hanger.
Yeah,
on the edge of
literally
a cliff. This is the way it ends. You would be upset, I think, as a Yellowjackets fan if this is how the series ended. If this is where it just ended, even though a lot of these things are tied up, you would be upset because you really do need the payoff, even if it was just one more scene of them being rescued. You kind of want to see that. But in addition to that, there's all these other things now that they've opened up the doors. They've opened up the doors of Ty being a cannibal in present day life. That is crazy. They've opened up the door of Shauna becoming unhinged and this possibility of there really being this last person standing, which we've been talking about for the last couple podcasts, right? We think it's going to be maybe Misty, who knows? But you have Melissa out there as well, who didn't make an appearance in this episode. She is on
and we
the
didn't
run.
find out what happened with the rest of her family either.
Yeah,
all that stuff. So that's
right.
kind of interesting.
So you've got that out there. Then you have, I don't even know if this is intentional or not, but for me, Akila is a hanging thread. We saw her last in the cave. We don't know where she went, right? So is it possible that she could be one of the survivors in adult timeline? I think that would be great because, she's a huge fan favorite. That would be wild. Now, of course,
it would be wise as well.
Yeah, exactly. Wise. And then we have all the stuff that happens when they actually get back to their timeline in 1998. So there's a lot of fascinating things that can be explored, and I think we definitely want to see that happen.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about going to the finale screening last night. That was so much fun.
So much fun to actually view the show on the big screen
Yes.
with a crazy audience.
Yeah,
like
audience
a really fun
full of
audience.
fans. I will say that we were waiting out in the line out front for a while, so we were definitely all getting ready to.
Yeah, it was
ready for a
mayhem.
beer.
But it was like a Yellowjackets party.
It was.
I mean, people were showing off T-shirts and paraphernalia. Some people even gave people tattoos.
Ooh,
You
yes.
know, so it was cool. And I think everybody was just having a great time
Yeah.
celebrating Yellowjackets.
What a fantastic way to watch that episode. There was so much energy in the room. We kind of were asking some people, had you seen the finale already? And I would say most of them said that this was their first time seeing it.
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple people next to me that were like, the people sitting right next to me said they had seen it, but they were super excited about seeing it again. And I got to say, it was really nice to just watch it, as we said, big screen and not having to worry about taking notes. So you just are really immersed completely.
To me, it was reminding me what it must have felt like, say, maybe when you were younger and a kid going to see something like The Goonies, like what
totally.
that experience would feel like if you were there with your friends watching this movie. And we were very lucky because we just happened to be sitting
right behind
of Ashley Lyle and a lot of the Yellowjackets team
and Ashley
there.
Sutton, too.
Ashley Sutton was
She
there.
actually said hi to everybody in the line as they came in because they had to go past everybody waiting, and they seemed like they were all super sweet.
Super sweet.
Really
and
enjoyed that.
Maï Appletam, who plays Desiree the divorcee, was there as well.
She had this really great jumpsuit,
Yeah.
and I saw it. I was like, oh my God, I have a jumpsuit too. I have a Hawaiian jumpsuit. So anyway,
Now, we actually got to speak to Ashley Lyle afterwards, which was really kind of maybe the highlight for me. We learned some things, actually, from Ashley. I was kind of like getting close. I wanted to talk to her, ask her a couple questions, and then I kind of overheard someone else. They were talking about the possibility of a season 4. And I think Ashley said that they are feeling much more hopeful, much more optimistic about season 4. So that news could come soon. It felt really good.
Fingers
and
crossed.
And I will say that even in the Q&A, the way they spoke about it, everybody, the cast and Ashley, because she is the only person that was chosen to ask a question of the cast from the audience, which was great. Definitely felt like they were talking about season 4. It was a pretty good.
yeah, it didn't sound like they were talking about this show as being the ending. They were talking about, oh, well, the stories in the future. I think you found an interesting tidbit out, too, from Ashley.
I really, really wanted to know. I wanted to know if my suspicions were correct. Was Akilah left in that cave with Lottie? And Ashley couldn't say one way or another necessarily, but she did confirm that, yes, Akilah was not in those scenes after the cave, the other scenes like the final feast or whatever. So that's very interesting. And then I did ask Ashley as well, how intentional are those decisions, those editing decisions, those writing decisions, those shots? And Ashley said they are very intentional. In fact, in the writer's room, whenever they have one of these moments, maybe these supernatural moments, they definitely have at least 2 explanations for everything. That is very intentional, and they do try to keep it sort of balanced. And Ashley said, I said, I really loved the reveal of the frogs. And Ashley said, oh yeah, that was planned from the very beginning. So it's really, really cool.
I made a point of not asking any spoilers. I kept saying, listen, I'm not going to ask for any spoilers.
Yeah.
I was just happy that we could be chatting to them and just letting them know how much we enjoyed the program, and that we told them about the podcast too. Hopefully they'll tune in.
Hopefully. And the other thing was, Craig and I believe Anna was there too, and their new soundtrack for season 3, Blood Hive, season 3 came out at the same day.
Yes.
And they actually have a new song, if you noticed at the beginning of the episode.
Right, the song which is now Sleepwalking. And
it's beautiful.
I guess people are calling it Lottie's theme, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that written out. But I actually checked out the video this morning, so it was cute. I know that the other person we were chatting to, I believe her name was Genevieve, but I don't know what her last name was. But she was
involved in it.
She was involved in the video production of it, and they were telling us, hey, you make sure you guys go out.
So check it out.
Yeah, check it out. It's available, I think, on all platforms.
It's so exciting to have a new soundtrack out as well of this fantastic music that accompanies all of our favorite show. Now, there was a Q&A as well, right?
Yeah, there was a Q&A with the teen...
Most of the teen cast.
It was kind of mayhem at the end. We did manage to get a picture with
Sammy
Hanratty, which was great. We tried to get the picture with Courtney Eaton, but
Right.
she was swarmed, and then her handler like whisked her away because it was getting too crazy.
It was wild. It was quite a scene. I do think that Ashley Lyle was having a really great time hearing that fan reaction in real time for this show that just came out. It was really, really cool. Anyway, what a fantastic, fun evening. Thank you, Vidiots, for having us. And we'll throw in a little Q&A moment right here in the edit. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like this was a really big emotional one for all of us, I think. I mean, like the episode's called Full Circle for a reason. Like it's incredibly charged. We were all excited about it and looking forward to it. And I remember when the script landed in everybody's inboxes, we were all just like hunched over reading it. Like, are you up to the bit? Do you know what happens? I'm not there yet. Don't tell me what happens. And it's been wonderful finally getting to release it to all of you guys. So and even just like standing up the back watching Sophie Thatcher like stand on the mountaintop. That's amazing. We're so lucky.
All right, now I'm not gonna go through all the other fan theories. I think that is something we should save for maybe a post-season discussion.
I think
leftover theories.
Yeah.
Hopes for season 4. One thing I did want to ask you though, was there anything that you feel could have been resolved differently that we saw? In other words, that we know was there, whether it's the Antler Queen, the Pit Girl, anything there that you feel, I don't know, should have been resolved differently, or anything you were...
Oh, you mean in the whole episode?
Yeah, in what we saw.
Well, I mean, I still would stand by. I felt like the wrap-up of the Callie Lottie thing was a little too quick. And I feel like maybe I'd like just a little bit more nuances about like even her getting out of there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Would have been good to see that. I know they had to fit a lot in.
I agree. I felt like it was super rushed, and I felt like there maybe wasn't as much attention or care put into that delivery of those scenes. It's like they just kind of smushed it all in there in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then moved on.
And there was a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
I think they would have been better served, and I know there was a lot going on in the last episode, and there was a lot going on in the episode before, but maybe if they had pushed all of this stuff back just slightly into the, you know what I mean? In the first couple episodes, which were maybe a little bit slower, they would have had more time to honor that. So I would agree. My other big thing I have to say that I was kind of surprised by, and again, this factors into how far into this actual timeline we are. When Natalie's up there at the top of the mountain and she's calling, are they going to be picked up tomorrow? I don't know. Are they still going to be out there for a while? Because there's so many people left in the cast that are technically survivors, right? You've got all those people. Jen, Britt, Robin, Melissa we know comes back. Jen we know dies at some point. Right? So there's all these people. Akilah, again, where she is. Are they going to get rid of some more people before they're actually rescued? Is there another couple weeks? Is there another month? Who knows?
Well, even the phone could be a teaser, too, because what if the next moment the phone goes out and nobody got any connection?
I agree.
So,
and I think that's maybe something they can play with when they get into season 4.
Right. I mean, the only thing I could say, though, is that maybe if that does happen, then probably Natalie's going to find herself ostracized from the group.
Well, and that's kind of what I was kind of hoping for. That's what I was going to say. I kind of had envisioned when they said originally in the pilot they split off into 2 tribes. I kind of feel like I need to see 2 tribes living in 2 separate areas. It's almost like on Survivor when like the one loses the beach and they got to start all over.
Well, maybe that'll happen.
I kind of want to see that because I always had assumed that the Pit Girl had happened after that had already happened. They'd already split up and they were hunting each other like this.
Right.
And I kind of would like to see that. So I don't know. I mean, it's tricky. In other words, I just didn't think that the Pit Girl thing was going to happen this quickly.
Yeah.
I'm glad it did. I'm glad they explained it. I'm glad we saw who Antler Queen is. I love that because if it doesn't get another season, then we needed to see that. But I kind of had hoped there would maybe been a little bit more disintegration of these people. I don't know. You could say that they've done enough of that. I think
maybe
the introduction of the Froggers, all that does set it up.
And maybe that is why this has been done the way it is, because let's just say if it, for some reason, the forces that be, they don't renew it, you could at least kind of tied. It's
Right.
kind of tied up.
And let's be honest, you have already tied up the other thing, which is Akila's vision actually really is true. Ben is the bridge. Ben was the bridge because it was Ben's, feast that attracted the attention of the Froggers, right? The sound, they came, they saw that, and they are the ones that have the phone. And Hannah really is the one that helps them escape, right? So it's kind of cool. Oh, Hannah needs to die.
Hannah still needs to die, too.
Yeah.
They say she's dead.
Yeah. Well, we will do some sort of season 3 wrap up. We'll talk more about theories because there's a lot more to cross off here. But for now, we are going to come in for a landing on this episode and this season to get right down to the Lotus Point. We're going to find out just how highbrow or lowbrow this episode and this season of Yellowjackets was. So, Doug, what did you rate this particular episode of Yellowjackets, the season finale?
I do believe I had rated this one a 3.85. And I probably almost could have pushed it a little higher, but I felt like the Callie storyline just could have been a little tighter, and that's what dropped it down. I was probably shooting more for like a 4 something, but
yeah,
that's where I came in.
Absolutely agree with you as well. I think that whole first sequence, just I don't know, Misty going to find Callie at the high school, and just that whole unveiling of that information, and then even the Callie Jeff scene, which just felt super rushed. So I gave it a 3.6. 3.6, okay. Just because a lot of the hunt isn't necessarily highbrow either. However, I will say that this was probably the most riveting episode of the season. I mean, it definitely was the most like on your seat kind of action. I really, really enjoyed it. So don't get me wrong. I'm just going on the highbrow, lowbrow, 3.6. Now, I have tabulated all the scores for the season, and they are going to appear on your screen right now. And magically, ironically,
you got a number for us?
I do.
Okay.
And it is also 3.6.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Isn't that weird?
That's pretty good.
So,
out of 5.
Now, out of 5, not bad. Now, I will say that the first season is so far still has the highest highbrow rating. And I'll post it here. And then the second season has slightly lower than that. And this is slightly lower than that.
Yeah, but I want to say, too, that just because something isn't highbrow doesn't mean it's not fantastic.
Right.
It's fantastic.
I'm going to say
it's one of my favorite television shows of all time.
I'm going to say this, that now looking at the 3 seasons, I almost see them as like 3 different pieces to this, broader project. And they have different colors to them. Okay. So season 1 to me is green. It is green. It is like introducing us to all this stuff. And the color most of the time is green out in the wilderness. And season 2 is definitely more somber and tragic. It's blue. It's this blue winter scene. It's definitely heavier. And then this is this warm golden hue.
Golden yellow.
To me, it's like energy. There's so much happening in this.
Kind of like
it
your
is
backdrop,
like,
but
It is, yeah, totally. It's definitely like a thrill ride. That's what I saw this season as. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I really enjoyed it. And even if that does mean it's like lower brow, it's still enjoyable. What's coming up next, though, Doug? What do you think we're going to have to...
Well,
what are we going to do next? Oh, my gosh.
Well, again, I think we could probably do a little recap on this.
Yeah.
And maybe a few other...
I like the idea of going through the rest of the theories. I think that'll open up a lot of discussion. Maybe we could even have Amanda G on to talk about some of her sleuthing. I think that could be fun.
And hopefully we'll go back on the sci-fi vision.
Oh, for sure. We'll do that another time as well. We also have some other kind of like deep dive ideas that we want to do. One of them in particular is an update on the extra jackets, because I do have some new information that I want to share. I just saw some screenshots that I had never even paid attention to, and they're kind of fascinating. So we will do that for sure at some point.
And we're probably going to do a season 2 recap of the Knots Landing, if you guys have never checked that out.
Yes.
That was our first podcast that we did, which was the longest running primetime
soap of the 80s.
Of the 80s and 90s. So we think we'll probably be going back to that for a bit.
I don't know if we're going to do specific episodes from season 2 or an entire recap. We still haven't figured that out, but we are going to get to that kind of soonish. So be on the lookout for that. More Yellowjackets coverage. It's going to be exciting. Maybe something else. Who knows?
Oh, I think there's some other things. We've been talking about some other shows that we really dig. And
you let us know in the comments if there's
why don't
any
you let us know if
series
there's one you're
that you would
thinking.
like us to cover when we get into this drought that we may have for a while.
But in the meantime, we might want to take a little mini break.
Little break.
Because it's been a lot.
Yes,
okay?
it's been a lot. It's been a lot, but enjoyable. Nonetheless,
super enjoyable.
And we really appreciate you all joining us for this season of Yellowjackets Season 3 coverage on Seaview Circle. It's been a lot of fun. And again, thank you for all of your comments.
I guess I don't want to say stay hungry, though, at
Yeah,
this point.
yeah.
How about, well, you could still stay hungry for the next season.
Sure.
When you get the update. But maybe you should have something to eat.
Yeah. Yes.
Now.
Yes. Eat.
Take a break.
Eat. But not your lover's heart. You know what I mean?
Don't eat your lover's heart.
Maybe just a candy bar.
Yeah, that'll work.
All right. Well, whatever we come up with next, we will see you then back on the sack.
Bye-bye.